1, 2, 3, 4. I first met Carol Dunlop in Paynesville, Ohio. I was a senior in high school at Thomas W. Harvey High School in Paynesville, and the only college around the high school was an all-girls college called Lake Erie College. The boys used to love to walk around the campus there because there were a lot of pretty girls and they were older than us. But we were kind of intimidated by the place because it was like a little enclosed enclave. So we never really penetrated that world much. But one day, my French teacher in high school, Miss Hamilton, asked me if I'd be interested in being in a play that the Lake Erie College French department was putting on. I'd never acted, but I was really good in French. I had straight A's, and someone from the college had come over and inquiring. They needed one male lead to play the part of Mascarille in a French play by Molière, Les Précieuses Ridicules. The rest of the cast were all to be women. So I was nervous, but I thought, oh, here's a chance to actually go over there and get into the inner circle. So I took a risk. So what the hell? So I went over there and I met with the director, and she showed me my part, which was about 500 lines. Told me I'd had to memorize them, and I was really intimidated by that, and I didn't think I could do it. But she told me that she believed I could. So I agreed to do the play, and she said there'd be a couple of girls, my co-actors, would be able to help me with dialogue. So it all started by me going over gradually and meeting with Carol Dunlop and another girl who were basically playing the opposite leads in the play to my role, and running through lines and so forth. And usually we did it in their rooms. Later I found out that it was like forbidden for boys to be in the girls' dorm rooms, but no one seemed to mind. I didn't know the difference. At that time I was still underaged, I suppose, and I was pretty much a free thinker, so I just went with the flow, and ended up getting to know the girls over there quite well. The play came up, and after a long rehearsal we did it, and it was a fantastic performance. I got a standing ovation, and I got to be friends, really deep friends, with the girls I'd been in with. Carol had a best friend named Deanna. I don't know her last name, but she was a beautiful blonde. She kind of looked like Brigitte Bardot. And one day while we were running through our lines, Deanna asked me if I'd give her a back massage. I said, oh, sure. So she just takes off her top and lies down on the bed, and, lucky me, right? So I'm massaging away on this beautiful blonde back, and Carol's kind of watching off there. Carol was a bit shy. Deanna was a bit more aggressive. She was a, what can I say? She spoke her mind, and Carol seemed to be a bit more effacing and self-effacing. But I liked her because she had a great sense of humor, and she'd always giggle and laugh at outrageous things that happen like this. So I got to be quite attached to Deanna, and our high school prom was coming up. Now, I'd never been to a high school dance before. I was kind of like not really in that crowd, but I wanted to go. It was like a thing you had to do, and I didn't have a date. So I asked Deanna, would you like to be my date to my high school prom? She said, no, I can't do that. I've got a boyfriend. But why don't you ask Carol? So I went over to Carol's room and asked her, would you be interested in going to my high school prom with me? She said, yes. There was no hesitation. So, looks so deceiving, right? So I bought her a corsage, and I borrowed my dad's car, and I got the tuxedo and all that, and drove over to Lake Erie College, picked her up, took her to my high school prom. We had the dinner and then a dance, and afterwards we're dancing, and it's the first time I'd ever danced with a girl. And later I'd found out Carol had been in a company with Nureyev. She had been a trained classical ballet dancer. But she never let on any of this. She just basically said I was pretty good, and I kept saying she's pretty good. And we were sort of like bullshitting each other, but it was playful stuff. And then I just started to fall for her. I mean, she was an incredible person, and she's a good listener, and she would give me her sonnets sometimes to, for my opinion. You know, she wrote sonnets for part of her creative writing class at the college. So I didn't know anything about poetry or sonnets. I was into James Bond, you know, and things like that. So I read all the James Bond novels. But anyway, I read them, and I told her what I thought, and obviously she got something out of it, because years later she wrote in my high school yearbook, "Thank you for the help on my sonnets." To this day I have no idea what they were, or I wish I had a copy, but anyway, we got close, and we'd go and, you know, nosh on, make out in my dad's car in the parking lot. It never got too deep, but it was for me, it was a mind-changing and life-changing experience. Carol also used to play guitar, and she would pull out her acoustic gut-string classical guitar and sing French folk songs like Plaisir d'amour. And you know, I was just mesmerized. I hadn't gotten into music at this stage. But her friend Deanna later told me that there was this folk singer from Cleveland, which was about a half hour north of us, who would occasionally came into the college campus and sang, did performances, and Carol just loved this guy, you know. So she loved music, and I think in some way she passed on this love of music to me, because I'd never been in such intimate encounter with another person singing like this. And she had a really beautiful voice, and I loved French, of course. Plaisir d'amour is still a great song. That's pretty much all that happened at the college. Then what happened was she moved during the break. She went back to Boston, where she lived, and we communicated a bit by letter. We were pen pals for a little while. She told me that it was time I got off the James Bond novels and started hitting the heavyweights, as she called it, Faulkner and Hemingway and people like that, who I'd never read. And then she said if I want to come to Boston for a holiday, come in and I could stay with her in her parents' house. So during the next school holidays, I took off to Boston. She met me, and I stayed in her parents' house. And we didn't stay together, but we hung out together. And I think that this was probably near the end of our little brief time together, because I could tell she had her eye on other things, and you know, we were the age difference was too great, you know. I remember once when we were making out, I said to her, I was trying to go, you know, that little bit extra, and she stopped at one point and said, "I'm not into this college morals bit." Now, whatever that meant. I think later I found out that one of the other girls that I also was in the play used to go down to the river with a lot of the high school boys and get it and have sex, you know. And there was a thing around this group of sophomores that was something that was okay to do. Nowadays, you know, we frown upon that underage stuff, but for some reason those girls didn't, and neither did the boys. I can guarantee you that they were lucky to get a college girl. Didn't have much, but I knew a couple of guys who said that, yeah, they had gone down to the river with Carol's friend. And I think Carol felt under a lot of pressure to be that kind of person, and yet our relationship was not based on that. It was based on more artistic parameters. You know, even though it got hot and heavy sometimes, it was still about poetry and music and theater and things I still do now, and she did to the end of her life. Anyway, I left Boston, came back to Painesville. We stayed in touch for a little bit longer by letter, and then finally I went off to college, to High University down south, and we lost touch. And that was the last I heard from her for 30 years. I tried to find her, but in those days there was no internet. It was pretty hard. And once the internet came into being, I used to do searches periodically to try to find her, but nothing. And then somewhere I read that she was married, lived in France, and had kids. And then she'd run off with Julio Cortázar, who I knew from Blow Up, was one of my favorite films when I was in school. And I didn't know much about his writing, but I bought one of his books, started to read it, and I realized that the blow-up that he actually wrote, the short story, had nothing to do with the film. If you read that story, you won't even know it's the same thing. It's completely different. They just reinvented it for the film. I mean, the Yardbirds were in the film, Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck playing guitar. Pretty amazing movie, though. And but anyway, I understood who Julio Cortázar was a bit more, that he had a great reputation in Argentina and in America, Canada, obviously, where he met Carol. And that's it. I couldn't, there was no more record of him. And gradually, years later, they began to get more of a presence on the internet. I began to follow threads, and which led me to this project. And unfortunately, by the time there was a way to actually contact her, she had passed away. And I regret that, you know, that there was never a closure to that. But what I can say is that it was an indelible influence on my career, because now I am a practicing poet, songwriter, composer, theater person. I mean, everything, all the seeds were planted there in Painesville with Carol Dunlop, and naturally fanned and fed and watered by many other people, but I can't go back any earlier than that except for my parents. That was like very primal for me, and the first, yeah, magical, huh?